Let's talk about rulers, guides, and the grid in 90-Second Website Builder. Hi again, this is Greg Hughes with another tutorial video. In this video I'm going to cover a few of the tools that help you keep your web page layout nice and straight. When you first open 90-Second Website Builder, you'll see that there are some rulers, one at the top, one on the side of the canvas, kind of help you measure your objects that help you keep them in the right place. These rulers are set with the page properties. So when you go to page properties, you decide on the size of your web page right here. This will set the width of the page, and this will set the height of the page in pixels. Now it's usually a good idea to use one of the presets here. Over here where it says target screen size, this is the size of a person's monitor. Now, a lot of monitors are 800 by 600 pixels, and if you're going to design your site to accommodate that kind of a monitor, then you're going to want your page width to be about 770 by 600. And if I choose that, you'll see that the rulers accommodate that. So if that's true, if this is how I was going to design my page, I would make sure I stay within the confines of these rulers, especially the width ruler. So let me bring in an image here to show you what I mean. If I was designing a page of this width, this image would be too wide. I don't want to bring it in because I'd be designing an 800 pixel, so to speak, or a 770 pixel website to accommodate an 800 pixel monitor. But these days people usually have bigger monitors, and I think a better default setting is a little bit bigger. Most people have a larger screen, so if we pick 1024 by 768, you can design your page width to be around 990. If that's the case, I can put my banner out here in the center. But let's talk, before we talk about laying out these images, which I'm going to do in a different video, I want to talk just about how to use the rulers and how to use the guides. So I'm going to move this image out of the way for now and show you a couple of tricks. First of all, 90-Second has a thing called a ruler guide. This is the ruler, but a ruler guide is a little line that's actually invisible to the end user. You only see it during the design mode. I'll show you what I mean. If I go up here and I grab, I'm pulling down this sort of invisible line. This is a guide. This helps me line things up. And I can have as many of these guides as I want to. I can put one there. I can go grab one and put one here. And I can use it as sort of a straight edge, if you will, to put my images in place. So if I want to use a guide to make sure I keep everything in the same spot, that's how I would do it. I can also create vertical guides and so on. Now, why would that be practical? Well, let me show you. One of the things you can do, if we go up to the Arrange menu, we go to Guide Settings, I can tell 90-Second to use the snapping feature with these ruler guides. So in other words, when I bring in an object, it will snap to my guides. I can decide whether those guides show above the objects I'm working with or behind, etc. And there are several other settings. I can even decide what color I want the guide to be. So let's just talk about that for a minute. So I've got snapping on, and so when I bring in an object, let's say I want my guide to be up here somewhere, and I put snapping on, you'll see that my image snaps to the guide. See how it's sort of jumpy? So it snaps right to the guide. And that can be helpful. It'll snap to this guide. But so how do I set these guides in the right spot? How do I know these are in the right place? Maybe I want this to be exactly 40 pixels down. How do I know? Am I going to have to sit there and count these little dots? No. There's another feature up here, Range, Ruler Guides, Format the Ruler Guides. I can decide where I want these. Now, this is telling me that my horizontal guides that I just drug out onto the canvas are at 32 pixels and 200 pixels. And that my vertical guide that I drug in is at 113 pixels. Well, I can just get rid of that, and I can make guides to be put them exactly where I want them. Let's say I want a horizontal guide to be at exactly 75 pixels. I say OK, OK, and here's my guide. It's set down at exactly 75 pixels. Let's say I want a vertical guide to be at exactly 100. So let's go do that real quick. Here's ruler guide formatting. I want a vertical guide that's at 100. There we go, 75 down, 100 in, and I want my banner to be exactly to start exactly at that point? Well, since I have snapping on, it's pretty easy to just snap it into place. Now again, when I preview this, you'll notice that the guides do not show in the preview. Those are just for design mode only. So my banner is exactly where I want it to be. So that's basically the basics of using rulers and their guides and how to format them. But you do have a couple of other options with guides that may or may not be important to you. One is you can change the color of those guides. Well, that might seem like too many decisions to make, but there's a reason for that. You might be working with a blue background, and if that's the case, you wouldn't see all of your guides, so you might want to change the color of the guide to red, and it would just be easier for you to see, depending on what you're working with. The other option is you'll notice that the guide is on top of the object here when I drag it over it, and there might be a case where you don't want to have the guide on top of your object. You want to look at the object, so you can change that very simply by saying display the rulers. Do not display the rulers on top, and then the guide would be behind it. So that's pretty much how you'd use the guides. There's one more thing that makes this even more amazing, actually. If we go to the guide settings, we can also use a grid. If you really want to get precise in where you place your objects, you can show a grid. A grid is just a series of dots. And let's snap to the grid like we're snapping to the guides. And as we do this, you'll see that my object, and you'll see lots of little tiny dots there, is snapping to the grid. See the little black dots that I'm snapping to. So you usually want to use the grid or the guides. You rarely would want to use them together, but some people would prefer the grid over the guide. By the way to get rid of these guides is you can just drag them back into their place and they'll go away. That's one way to do it. And use the grid instead. And you'll notice the grid, the dots here in the grid. I can even adjust. Yes, I can even make another decision. I can make those be tighter. I think they default actually to 10 anyway, and I can change the color. I'll keep them black, seems to be easy. So now I got little tiny dots that are 10 pixels apart, and again, since snapping is on, I can snap to the grid. Okay, so that's basically how you use rulers, guides, and the grid to make sure your objects are exactly where you want them to be. I'm also going to talk about placing objects in the center of the page that you're working on. In this case, we're working with a 900 and approximately 990 pixel wide web page. I'm going to do that in another video. It's very important to know how to place your objects so that your website looks its best on just about any monitor.